For decades, analysts have viewed the relationship between the United States and China through the lens of traditional international relations. Today's reality is defined by two simultaneous trends: a steadily narrowing economic and military power gap between these states, and an acute rise in internal political polarization within them. Theories like the Thucydides trap or offensive realism operate on the assumption that states are rational actors, trying to maximize their external security in an anarchic world. These models struggle to explain the current dynamic. They fail to account for the specific patterns of economic self-harm and the totalizing nature of the current strategic competition between Washington and Beijing. To accurately predict the future global order, we must invert our standard assumptions. Contemporary geopolitics has become a direct byproduct of states attempting to manage their own domestic fragility. Both the United States and China have recently adopted holistic national security strategies. These frameworks formally erase the boundary between domestic policy and foreign policy. Detailed analysis of these documents reveals a central strategy. A nation's global posture is now engineered specifically to manage internal systemic decay. This represents a departure from the Cold War model, which focused on external power balancing and ideological containment, as separate from domestic administration. To understand current global maneuvering, we must first reverse engineer the domestic socioeconomic crises driving the players. The United States' strategic posture is increasingly reactive, designed to manage the fallout of relative imperial decline and decades of domestic deindustrialization. As minority populations grow, traditional voter mobilization shifts. This demographic transition pressures long-standing social hierarchies, creating the fierce internal friction seen in recent mass protests. Framing China as a strategic competitor provides a vital bipartisan tool to unify a fractured electorate, shifting the public's focus toward an external adversary. This external threat is used to politically justify aggressive, protectionist reindustrialization policies, a move back toward the economic nationalism of Friedrich List. In this context, U.S. containment of China acts as an internal political mechanism utilized to rebuild a specific domestic socioeconomic base. This internal focus translates to foreign policy through a specific international hierarchy ideology, rooted in Anglo-Saxon centralism and American exceptionalism. This framework makes it difficult to accept a non-Western peer. The narrowing power gap is framed as an existential threat, rather than a natural shift. The resulting geopolitical output is a restructuring of global alliances into rigid concentric rings. The inner core, exemplified by AUKUS and the Pax Silica region, represents a trusted circle, sharing strategic technology, intelligence, and integrated supply chains. We see this integration in strategic agreements, where these nations align their technological and military futures directly with Washington. The second ring consists of tributary states, including much of the EU. Their role is to absorb the economic costs and regional military risks inherent in confronting a major power. Rather than preserving a unified global order, the United States is building a partitioned fortress to maintain its technological and hierarchical primacy. China's system runs on a different imperative, funding an extensive universal welfare state to maintain regime stability. To afford this, the state must hold 40% of global exports. This massive volume requires aggressively securing raw materials and global trade routes to prevent domestic economic disruption. China's geopolitical footprint is dictated by the mathematical requirement to fund its internal socioeconomic promises. To navigate these global requirements, Beijing utilizes multilateralism to advocate for a non-ideological international framework. This posture is designed specifically to prevent the formation of the rigid military and political blocs that the United States relies on to exert influence. Beijing replaces traditional Western aid with state-backed productive infrastructural investments. This explicitly binds developing regions to Chinese supply chains without requiring formal political alliances. This system allows China to champion global free trade and open borders abroad while maintaining selective protectionism and strict market controls at home. For the Chinese leadership, multilateralism is a pragmatic operational tool designed to keep global markets atomized and receptive to their industrial output. When these two holistic strategies collide, the fiction is immediate. The United States attempts to draw rigid borders and standards around specific nations, while Chinese connection lines snake around those barriers to keep trade flowing. Both superpowers face inescapable paradoxes. To achieve its reindustrialization, the United States must rely on the same globalized financial circuits and dollar hegemony that initially hollowed out its industrial base. China's risk lies in its atomized system. Middle powers like India or Brazil can leverage this multipolar friction for their own gain, potentially disrupting the economic timelines Beijing depends on for internal stability. Both nations are attempting to re-engineer the international order to protect their domestic systems, yet both are constrained by their own internal structural limits. Because these strategies are driven by the need to manage internal instability, there will be no stable equilibrium or return to a traditional Cold War balance. The coming era will be defined by a progressive fragmentation of global standards, resulting in competing tech ecosystems, separate financial protocols, and siloed supply chains. This environment will be marked by intense competition and highly conditional cooperation, where strategic agreements are selective and fleeting. The future of the international order will be dictated by the localized management of internal state fragility.